Welcome back. This week on the F100, I want to get this interior finished up, even get the doors on. We've got that fiberglass headliner that we need to get test fit and trimmed, and then we'll install it. After we cover it with the headliner material, get the seats installed back in the cab, then we can trim this carpet, which such a disappointment from AAC, the way that fit or actually didn't fit. Then maybe door handles and stuff on the doors, got new seals for it. But I really want to get that buttoned up before we move on to things like these cool suspension parts. Ugh, this fiberglass gets all over everything. So according to the guy I bought this from, the shade-free headliners, he said it'll tuck in behind the rear view mirror. So I put it there. I don't have the visors in yet. And then he says it tucks in behind the rear window seal. I don't think it's going to be long enough to do that. I'm not sure. I'm going to try to get it fit in here first. I mean, I love the idea of this. It'd be awesome. But I can already tell it's coming up way short of reaching this line and tucking in the back glass at the same time. It'd be rather disappointing if this ends up not working out. Oh. Ow. That's painful. Sheesh. I really dislike fiberglass. Here's the assessment. I was able to get it tucked into the weather strip, the back window gasket. Not very far, but it's in there, which now it comes down much further on this side, as you can tell by where these ribs are. When you look at this side over here, and this one's still exposed. So we could trim that one just to kind of clean it up and level it. But this one's going to need to be trimmed up almost all the way to where it has that seam. Both sides will need to be trimmed towards the front of the door opening, and it's not going to come anywhere near being held in by this rear view mirror. So that's kind of disappointing as well. I was hoping, and I think the plan was, it was supposed to tuck into this line right here, which would have been awesome. But now it doesn't, and it's not even close enough to really make it work in that seam. I thought about adding on to it and just building on it with my own glass work, but I really hate fiberglass. You know, it's not like this was a $500 headliner, but a piece of cardboard's like $150, and we would have been finished by now. Alright, try number 2. I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier how much I really hate working with fiberglass. I think we've got it close enough where we're just going to send it. Also, I almost forgot, but I didn't ran this wire for the dome light down this A-pillar, and it'll tie in with the door switches and this dimmer light, so if you rotate it far enough it'll kick the dome on. So I need to get that drilled out in the headliner and then clean it off and put some of our foil backed foam on there for that extra insulation and sound deadening. One of the items we picked up from LMC Truck a couple of weeks ago were the new door seals, and they're made in Thailand, so I'm sure they're going to be awesome. I'm also going to take this access panel off and clean up inside the smooth surfaces of this door and apply that foil backed foam to it. That'll help with temperature control and sound deadening. The door is a pretty good access point for that kind of stuff. So I've gone around and scraped all the major portions that I could of the old weather strip. I took my pocket knife and just cut the large part of the head of these, I guess, inserts that the wires made into this weather strip latch into. And so now that I've cut the tops off, I'm just kind of knocking them into the inside of the door, because it would be way too much effort to try to pull those out. Their whole purpose in life is to stay in. So cut the heads off with a razor blade or something, be careful, and then just knock them inside the door. We'll take this panel off and we'll get them out while we clean the rest of the junk out of there. So these doors have some factory sound deadening already in them. See, it's weird, it's got that blue and it's kind of a gold tint. And there's all the junk from 60 years inside this door. Pretty sure we figured out why the lock cylinder didn't work. But what I don't see is what they call cancer. And cancer is that kind of rust that there's no coming back from unless you just cut everything out. Most of this stuff is just surface, which is kind of a relief, to be honest with you, because if you remember back in the first video, we found a little more rust than we thought we would on the bottom of the cab. I've wiped out the inside of the door really well with lacquer thinner and blew it out, cleaned it out, vacuumed it out, all the above, and installed that foil-backed insulation to both inside the door and the back side of that access panel. I'm using 3M's black super weather strip and gasket adhesive. And believe it or not, with 3M stuff, it does matter if it says super, because they do offer the regular. And I'm not sure why anyone wouldn't want super. Some parts of this are going to be formed for body lines, and you're going to want to install those areas first if possible, so you don't end up shorting yourself when you get to that feature. And pro tip with the weather stripping is keep some masking tape handy to hold that weather strip in place in certain areas where it's going to want to retract. Our headliner material did show up, but it's all wrinkly from being packaged, so we're letting that hang for probably a few days. Meanwhile, I'm held up on the rest of the stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and install this driver's door, then I'll do the same treatment to the passenger door and probably go ahead and get it installed as well. One of my first jobs, working on cars, my first job right out of high school was at a body shop. The shop owner taught me this trick that if you're ever dealing with installing a door or replacing door pins and bushings, you just set it on a floor jack, and that gives you a little functionality to move it up and down and in and out. Pretty smart, simple idea. So one of the tips I'm pretty sure I showed, maybe in a, I don't know if it's a different series or this one, I like to put engine assembly lube on these bolts because it won't drip off there ever, but it still provides a good lubricant and rust protection. Set the door in the frame with the door hinges and get those aligned. And if it tries to move upon closure, probably need to move your striker or the latch mechanism in the door frame itself to get it where you want it to be. Well, this stuff got a lot of really good reviews. a few bad ones, but with Amazon, it's kind of a crapshoot of what to listen to. Can't hardly believe what you read. Well, that's a waste. So after letting that cloth slash polyester material lay across the couch for 2 days, still had wrinkles. I was afraid they were going to be permanent. So basically said the heck with that and went and bought 2 yards of this from a local upholstery shop, and it's foam backed suede. And you might ask, what made you choose suede? My answer would be, well, it's suede. I'm going to pre-cut it to where it's at least somewhere close to the size of our headliner, because I'm afraid it would be a handful to try to glue and trim this in its full width and length. I don't want to do upholstery for a living. You need 6 arms and a huge work table, but it is suede and it's installed, and it sounds so much different in here with that covered. So anyway, I'm going to get to the visors and the rear view mirror, and that'll wrap up everything up above. Well, I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to put these seats in when there's no carpet and insulation. But we're going to get it done. I figure we'll start with the driver's seat, wire it up, move on to the console, and then do the passenger seat last, because it'll have the ground and all the connections for the audio system. Way quieter in here with that headliner. I like it. You notice right away one of the reasons why, or the reason why we didn't cut the carpet to fit until we put the seat in, is because it creates a little bit of this swelling and warps and stuff. So we want to wait until the seat's bolted down before we do any trimming, so it doesn't press it out and end up being the wrong length that we cut. So this is the first time we've tested these seats. We probably could have bench tested them a long time ago, but we didn't, because we trust the guy who did this for us. Ooh, it's not terribly loud, but I do feel it in the bottom and the back. So, looks like the fan speed changes when you select the lower ones, and there's off. The fan speeds are a lot lower on the heat setting than on the cool. Probably so you don't overcool that coil when it warms up. This is our USB that we mounted inside this console, so we'll have power and audio connection to our phone. There's our handy little seat heater connection. Now, finding our ground and for both the amp and the seat heater. So this is 2 layers of that braided loom that's kind of like the Chinese finger cuffs. So that will provide a lot of protection on this cable. Now again, these are ground, so even if they rub through to something metal and sharp, all it's going to do is help their cause. But I kind of like having it made on purpose with a little protection on there, just in case. Keep everything happy, in proper working order. For our next trick, we want to get our dome light hooked up. And the Speedway harness sends you a power and a ground for the dome light. And what basically you need to do is find your temporary grounds when doors are open. And most of your door jamb switches are essentially grounded when the door is open, aka the switch comes out and makes contact and grounds with the door frame. And when you close the door, it creates an open loop, therefore stopping the ground for the dome lights. There's also an override basically in the headlight switch, so if you rotate it far enough, it creates a ground for that dome light. Does that make sense? I doubt it. Probably smarter to do before you bolt this door in so you can reach inside and tighten the nut on there. And I may end up taking the door off if I can't reach through this access port and back up this nut. Yeah, I ended up taking it off. Lots of progress. We did go ahead and put both of the door pulls on. By the way, the other door's on. Door pulls are on, which we didn't want to do until we could sit in the cab and test fit and make sure it was kind of the right height of where we wanted it. And once we did that, make sure it's kind of where you can reach it to close the door too. But it provides a pretty good area, this angle to the steering wheel. By the way, steering wheel got recovered. So it's a pretty basic process with these forever sharp wheels. They just unbolt on the back side and then cut your material and take your time and wrap it and tuck it in there with that spray adhesive. And it really complements the seats whenever that matches, and everything looks on purpose. All we've got left is to trim this carpet. Now you would think cutting it a little long on your first pass would go without saying, but one thing I've learned in all my years of adulting is that nothing goes without saying. So I'm going to make a mark of where this door opening is, and we're going to cut this carpet a little bit at a time and work our way to where hopefully it's going to end up. And that's handled. Carpet is trimmed. And it still doesn't fit that well. I don't know if you guys have heard me complain about that yet, but I want to make sure and have it established. Anyway, that wraps up the interior in this F100 project pretty much completely. I will point out the weather strip and the anti-rattle and stuff. That stuff's all on back order and has been for several months, but we're on a waiting list to get that shipped to us as soon as it comes back in stock for both doors. So I hope you guys enjoyed. It wasn't a ton of fun doing it, but the results were probably worth it. I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next week.